Okay, so here we're going to talk about Vladimir Putin. Like, how much do you actually understand of how Putin thinks? And like, I don't want people to think, well, he's just uninformed. No, he's informed. He's really informed, but he's informed in a system that could perhaps mislead him because it's an authoritarian system. But he does his homework, or Putin's not this, or Putin is that. We have to understand him fully. Now, before we watch this is Putin must be stopped. This is I worked with Putin. Here's what you don't know about him. This will give you some context and help you understand you'll be able to see around corners a little bit more effectively when you understand your adversary. Now, why do you need to understand him? There's this great quote in a book called Ender's Game. In the moment when I truly understand my enemy, I understand him well enough to defeat him. In that very moment, I also love him. I think it's impossible to really understand somebody, what they want, what they believe, and not love them in the way that they love themselves. And then, in that very moment, when I love them, I destroy them. Now, Ender's Game is an interesting book. The book was on the Marine Corps Commandant's reading list, okay? Ender's Game. It's down here by Orson Scott Card. And the book is a science fiction book. It's about a kid who's becomes a strategist, and he's fighting these space aliens, and he's talking about his enemy, these aliens, that like he came to so understand his enemy that he came to actually appreciate, even love them. But at that point, when he so understood them, he understood how they actually were going to act and react. And that's what we need to understand. I'm not asking you to love Putin. I am asking you to understand him as much as humanly possible, and we're going to do that here. This is in the Kyiv
Good morning,
Post.
Andre. It's great to see you.
Good morning, Jason. It's very nice to see you as well.
Andre, you're a well-known economist globally, but you've done something different. You were a senior policy advisor on economics for Vladimir Putin for a number of years. So you've got to see the guy up close, not just through the newspaper. Tell me, what is he like? Who is Mr. Putin?
You're absolutely right, sir. I was almost for 6 years as economic policy advisor to Russian president. What can I tell you? Just he's very organized. He is very well prepared. If he's not prepared, at least in my time, he spent a lot of time just to find out not only the general picture, but the details.
Okay, so he's organized, prepared, looks at the details of whatever. Now, with the details of what's being fed to him, yes, but he looks at it. He's not just lazy, sitting around in his villas, whatever, or hiding out in his bunker or whatever. Like, you have to understand, like, he does his homework.
And usually he's so much prepared to what he's going to do that he has a number of versions, number of options, number of scenarios. And he's very good in that stuff. So that is why anybody who is thinking that he's out of touch, he's living in a different century, or he's some kind of sick, or they're just purely incorrect.
Now, I put this, when I heard him say this the first time, that's when I decided to do this video, because I've seen a lot of you in comments talk about those kind of things. You have to understand your adversary. You have to understand what he's actually thinking or how he's processing. He does prepare. He does do his homework.
He's one of the best preparing person to anything that he's going to undertake. So, for example, his war against Georgia, he started to prepare in September 1999 when he was a prime minister. And he realized his scenario 9 years later. He started to prepare his war against Ukraine, the latest that we can detect, in year 2003. And
did you hear that? He started to prepare for the war in Ukraine in 2003. By 2014, NATO couldn't have gotten the argument that NATO is expanding to the east, and his argument in 2022. Well, we had to do this because NATO was expanding. That was defeated by his 2014 invasion because they were on. There was a conflict within Ukraine. They couldn't join NATO, but he started preparing for that years earlier.
we have the full-fledged war in year 2022, so 19 years later. So that is why that a person not of short-term solution, he is a person of long-term strategy.
Mm-hmm.
So you've probably heard the rumors. Some are saying that the U.S. and European leaders are trying to pressure Ukraine to enter into negotiations for peace with Russia. If that were to come to pass, do you think that Vladimir Putin will keep his word? Can he be trusted?
Oh, no,
Now, this is also really interesting. So we know that he's a long-term preparer. Is he the kind of person that can keep his word? If he is, that might mean one thing for negotiation. If he's not, that means something totally different for negotiation.
we know that he violated all agreements that either he himself or Russia before him signed with Ukraine. All documents, the bilateral treaty between Russia and Ukraine, the so-called Big or Grand Treaty, the agreement on creation of CIS, Commonwealth of Independent States, the United Nations Charter, the Helsinki Act of 1975 for preserving stability, peace, and international borders in Europe, the Budapest Memorandum of 1994, the special agreement concerning bilateral border between Russia and Ukraine, and so on and so on. So just we don't have any document that he would not violate.
So if you conclude peace with this guy who's violated that, where's that going to leave you? What do you think is going to happen? So can you conclude a peace? Or are you just extending the war and taking a time out if you conclude a peace?
So that is why that gives an idea to anyone, just whether to trust or not to trust, not only the oral word, but the written document signed by Mr. Putin.
So Vladimir Putin, why does the West get him wrong? Or what is it the West gets wrong about Vladimir Putin?
I would not say all Western people, but many of them, especially those who are taking decisions and kind of pursuing policy, they have absolutely kind of wrong understanding of the culture of that person that they probably did not meet in their life in the Western countries, because they are not accustomed to the situation in which all rules are violated all the time.
Right. I mean, we think, wait a minute, violating rules all the time. Wait. We have to have the rule of law. He's not about that at all. As an analog, with Vietnam, we got it wrong thinking that China was going to come in and support Vietnam and they were going to come across the border. Remember how China did with Korea and North Korea sweeping across the border? We had this idea. Vietnam hates China. They couldn't stand it. Like, they go back thousands of years. But we, with our American mindset, just, maybe that could happen again. We have to understand where Putin's coming from. What his culture's like, that he's going to wantonly violate whatever agreements he's going to wantonly violate, because that's how he thinks, that's how he functions, that's the culture in which he comes from. Okay.
Leaders, certainly to different extent, accustomed to the rule of law or to some kind of rules or some institutions, something stable and some promises that have been kept by at least leaders of their other countries. So they are not accustomed to the situation which any of these promises, institutions, rules can be violated at any time. So that is why they just purely do not understand their so-called partner or kind of.
Right. And if they get that wrong, where does that leave us? See, we're thinking that we're playing by the same rules. Like if we go into a boxing ring and we start boxing, there are rules to boxing. But if we're boxing and the opponent thinks he's wrestling, we're in a whole different ball game, right? We're playing two different sports.
Or adversary.
Well, let's imagine that tomorrow the West did actually force Ukraine to sit and negotiate peace with Russia, or at least a ceasefire. And you've said that you don't think that Russia would obey by it. What do you think would happen next? How do you think that Putin would treat this behavior from the West?
No, we know the kind of it was in front of our eyes. So the West forced Ukraine to sit at the table with Russia and to sign Minsk Agreement. Minsk Agreement 1, it has been violated by Russia. After that, the West forced Ukraine to sign Minsk Agreement 2. Ukraine did it, and after that, Putin violated Minsk Agreement 2 on February 24th, 2022. It is obviously. So what will happen with the Minsk 3 or Istanbul 1 or with any other agreement of such type?
It's a good question. It's a legitimate question. I mean, think about it. Think about the person that doesn't honor his commitments, that has done it before, that has these ambitions, these strategic long-term ambitions. Like, everything adds up that this would be a bad idea.
He will violate, definitely. And moreover, that's a tradition to some extent, especially such agreement like Minsk or Istanbul that has been prepared. All those agreements have one particular and very clear goal: to weaken Ukraine, to weaken Ukraine's ability to resist, to limit Ukraine military forces. Just for what? Just to make next attack against Ukraine more successful than the
right. So what you can do is you can kick the can down the road. You can have peace in our time in order to have peace, and we've ended the war. Well, for now, because all you've done is pause it, and they're going to come back even more stridently later on.
Previous ones. So it's absolutely clear, without any doubts, what is the purpose of such agreements would be on the Putin side.
Okay, so tell me what you think. I think this is really important to understand. Put your comments below. Thank you for your time, the likes, the shares, the subscribes, and the coffees, and thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.